design and educational technology at the Open University. But as soon as the local people in Beaver heard design, they had me doing all their posters, and I realised that at the other end of Beamont, Peter was doing all the design work for the Wildlife Trust, just about. And he's gone on from strength to strength, and I think he's been involved in almost all the really, really exciting publications to do with wildlife, certainly in the 3 counties. So over to you to talk about that.
Right, this is about the challenge of designing photographic field guides. I really started to get into that type of thing when the person that's labelled there, Paul Brock, got in touch with me to see if we wanted to do a book on the insects of the New Forest, because he'd seen some of the other books we've been doing. And I never say no to anything. I thought, well, it's worth going down and seeing what we wanted to do. And we ended up doing this book for him. And it was, he wanted to get a lot of insects in there, not just the usual suspects, butterflies and moths. And looking through the field guides that we all have grown up with, a lot of the Collins field guides on insects, 2/3 of the book was butterflies and moths, and the other third was all the other insects, which might have been 12 pages on flies, perhaps 20 pages on beetles, but not much else, and then the other groups of insects hardly got a look at. So one of the things I said we really needed to do is get a good even spread over the large groups of insects. So you'd have as many pages on beetles as you did with the butterflies and moths, and as many pages on flies as well, and bugs, so they all got a really good look in. And luckily, Paul Brock had also got an awful lot of photographs to choose from as well. So it was quite an easy decision then to work with him on producing this. And it got some good reviews, even though it was only based on the New Forest. One of the reviews that was mentioned saying that it was good enough to use as a field guide for insects of southern Britain, which again then got stuck in my head. Should we be doing a field guide for southern Britain, or even Britain as a whole? And so over the year I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, who can I ask? Well, Paul Brock was the obvious choice at first, and so we, I spoke to what we went down, and I met him again and said, would he be keen on doing something like that? And he agreed it would be a good idea, and he got an awful lot of records. He goes all over the place recording insects anyway, so we thought it was worth a possibility. So after the initial chat with him, we thought it would be worth getting together and producing a book on insects of Britain and Ireland, again based on his photographs, but also other photographers that we both knew that might be able to help. He was also fairly quick writing the texts as well, so it was definitely worth thinking about. This was the first idea of the cover, because obviously if we want people to buy the book, it has to look eye-catching on the cover. And a lot of the other books we've done, this was the type of design that we were using. A lot of our books had 3 photographs at the bottom and a main one at the top. So that was the first idea. Wasn't entirely happy with it. I wanted to certainly focus something that most people knew, which was the swallow-tailed butterfly, but also to indicate that there's a lot of other things in the book as well. So it featured a dragonfly, beetle and a fly. But it wasn't quite enough. What I wanted to do was then perhaps show a few more insects and make it a little bit more interesting on the cover. We'd already done the first edition of this book, which had the swallowtail on, but that sold really well. It went into a reprint, and we sold out of those eventually. And then the next obvious decision was to do perhaps a new edition, but it was only worth doing that when there were enough changes that warranted it, because with taxonomy, there's been lots of name changes over the intervening few years, so a new edition meant we could update a lot of the information. We could also possibly put in more species. But this book did really well as well. Got an awful lot of good comments and reviews. So I'm going the wrong way again. So what did that mean? So this was the idea of the layout, which was based on Paul Rock's New Forest book. But what we wanted to do was have it as easy to read the text, and you've got the species right next to it. We'd also chose the species quite well, which ones we wanted to illustrate, and then you can see we've got a dotted bee fly at the top next to the commoner dark-edged bee fly, and you can compare them straight away. Then you can see the differences. And we featured quite a few other bee flies, but just to give a good selection, that there weren't just the two species, showing quite a few more. And again, this approach works really quite well with people, and we will see a bit later. Yes, there is another page from it. Slightly different approach on some of the pages where we'd featured a particular species. So we might have half a dozen species described on one page, and on the other page you had the photographs of them. But then you had other families where there were lots that you could put in, but we thought, well, some of these are quite tricky for a lot of people, so we'd only perhaps feature one or two, but again it was showing a group of insects from one particular family. So we didn't have much of a description, but it was there just to say, look out for these as well. So there we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 families on that one page, and you can see from there where it describes how many species are in the family. You've got, for the grassflies, 177 species, and we're showing 4. But again, that was, and we had to try to keep it within a certain number of pages. So sometimes because the book was about all the insects, we needed to keep the flies down to perhaps 100 odd pages in the book. So again, the popular ones, the popular flies, got more of a look in than the less popular, but it was still giving a good impression of what's out there. We've been doing we just don't just do the UK, just to show you that we do get involved with far-flung places as well. We've been doing a lot of work with the British Overseas Territories on field guides for all sorts. And St Helena, we started to do a lot of books for them on their flora, marine life, and then recently we've just done this one on the terrestrial and freshwater invertebrates of St Helena, with the famous spiny yellow woodlouse, or spiky yellow woodlouse, which is one of the key species on there. I've never been out there. But it's, I mean, people do go out and look, you go to St Helena for this species, and it's also apparently easier to see at night because it's in ultraviolet. It shines out as purple in the. You see, people do go out looking for it at night to find it then. Let's see if I press the right button. Right. So, based on those other books, and I'd got a particular interest in flies anyway, we thought it might be interesting then to go another stage further in a group that doesn't really get much of a look in a lot of field guides. As I mentioned earlier, the old Collins one, you might have had 10 or 12 pages on the flies, but because Paul Brock's had over 100, and it was one of the features that a lot of people liked, we thought now perhaps is the time to do something on a large group of insects. We've got over 7,000 species of flies. As I say, in the other book we had 400 odd species. When the new edition of the flies book came, of the insects book came out, Paul Brock had already just signed a deal with another publisher to do a book on insects of Britain, which is the one by Wildbird. They came out more or less within a year of each other. It didn't really affect us that much. I mean, probably if that book hadn't come out, we would have sold a lot more of the second edition. But there were quite a few reviews came out, and 2 people reviewed the new Paul Brock book as a comparison with ours, and said, that they were both worth buying. But this one was easier to carry because it was a lot lighter and had a lot more species in. So we got a lot of extra sales because of those reviews comparing ours with the other one. But I know most people, I mean, I've got both, and I dare say a lot of people have got both books, and the 2 together are worth using together as well. But you'll probably notice if you've got the Wild Birds one, it's got about 100 flies in, instead of, I mean, we had 400 odd in our original Insects of Britain and Ireland, and Paul told me that the publisher said nobody's interested in flies, so they're saying keep it to a minimum of about 100 species, which I dare say most of you would disagree with that. Nobody's interested in flies? Well, I'm certainly interested in flies, and I know you. So we thought, no, let's prove them wrong and do a guide on flies of Britain and Ireland. And we've got a good team together with Gail Ashton, and certainly Stephen Faulkner, most people have heard of. He came on board and is now he's racing away with the text. We're about 2/3 of the way getting the book laid out. And also, Dr. Erica McAllister agreed to write the foreword. So we've got a good team there to. I'm just stuck on the end because it was my idea, but yeah, and Rory Dimmins, who a lot of people might not know, they were keen on getting him involved because he's up and coming and relatively young. He's in his kind of early to mid 30s, so getting somebody new on board as well, I thought was a good idea. And we are. There's some examples. There's plenty of examples of the pages at the back there. I've laid out, as I say, about 2/3 of the book now. And we tried to do each major group fairly give really good coverage. We've got so most of the the crane flies, we've got a good number of pages on that rather than perhaps half a dozen pictures. So they total about 30 or 40 pages in the book. And the short pouch crane flies get a very good look in as well. Every family of flies we're covering, some are in, so it might be the whole family, like the horse flies for instance, and others will show a really good range, like the hover flies and some of the other popular groups. And then there's other families where we're showing the whole lot, as long as they can be ID'd from a photograph. So the horse flies, I mean, Martin, you read through quite a lot of the sections that you're, and you know, for instance, that on some of those we have described as all the species in the family. So it's going to be quite a, I think, so here's an example of the robber flies. And I put this example up only because of this one photograph in the top, the red-legged robber fly. And this was laid out before I realised that I was pretty sure I'd seen that fly, but not down in Devon and not in Shropshire, where the only two records were from. And luckily, I'd kept some of the more photogenic flies that I didn't ID. I've got a section called Unidentified Species, and it just hit me that I was pretty sure I'd seen that. So I looked back through, and I basically got a photograph almost exactly the same angle. I was certain it was that, but I thought I'd better check it with Owen Steenford and Martin and the two people that had seen it in Shropshire and Devon were also involved and checked it out. And it was confirmed that I'd seen this in 2012 in Oxfordshire at Dry Sandford Pit. So we've got a third site right between the two little arrows there, which one was Devon and one was Shropshire. So if I wasn't laying this out, I wouldn't have known about this species, and hopefully one of the ideas for this book is that some people who like the flies, they'll find this an easier resource to check some of their photographs against. And I think that was the last one there. That's it.